Good evening, everybody. Welcome to this meeting of the Vale of Whitehorse District Council Scrutiny Committee. I'm Councillor Catherine Foxhall and I'll be chairing this meeting. We have Mark Minion from Senior Management Team and Candida Basilio from Democratic Services in support, and I have Councillor Judy Roberts next to me. Awesome. Co-chair, Deputy Chair. This meeting is being held in Abbey House, Abingdon. Voting members of the committee are here in person as required, and we have officers in the room and joining remotely. So thank you everybody for joining us. This meeting is being recorded to be streamed later for the public to view. If those of you who are online could keep your microphones muted while not speaking, that'd be helpful, but please do raise your hands if you'd like to speak. For those who are in the room, the evacuation procedure in the event of an emergency is to evacuate through the nearest exit, which is from the corridor around to our right, and please assemble in the car park. If anyone needs a break, there's water in the foyer and the toilet as well. We'll take a quick break between the two big items this evening. Please keep your mobile phones silent or off, and committee members, unless your phone's away, you have your meeting papers, please don't use them during the meeting. At the end of the meeting, I'll confirm that the recording has ended, and please do remember to sign in as you leave. All right, so item 1 on our agenda, Chair's announcement. We just have 2 main items of business this evening. We have the annual delivery plan for 26-27 for Vale, and an update on the Beacon Development Action Plan. So for the first item, we're joined by Andy Fulsham, Cabinet Member, and Tim Arouye, Head of Policy and Programme, so thank you both. And then for the second item, we have Helen Piggles, Cabinet Member, and Phil Barker, who is Head of Communities, and Daniel Harrison, Community Arts Manager, so thank you very much. I don't have any other announcements to make. Item 2, apologies for absence. Candida.
We've had one apology from Councillor Ben Potter, and we have Councillor Max Thompson, who's attending as substitute member.
Brilliant. Thank you, Max, for joining us. Right, the minutes of the last meeting. For those of you who were with us, which I think is most people in this room, it was the Revenue Budget and Capital Programme, which was held on Monday, the 2nd of February. Are there any comments or corrections to be made to those minutes? No, it's ready. So for those of you who are here, could I have a proposer and a seconder? The accuracy of those? Judy, Ron?
Yeah.
Perfect. Thank you ever so much. So I'll sign those at the end.
Is everyone okay with those? Just to check. Show of hands.
Oh, sorry. Yeah. I saw no dissent. Thank you. Perfect. Okay. Item 4, declarations of interest. Do we have any declarations of disclosable pecuniary interests, other registrable interests, and non-registrable interests, or any conflicts of interest in respect of items on the agenda for this meeting? I think the main one with the Beacon in the past has been we have some members who are on Wantage Town Council, but I don't think that refers to anybody here this evening, so that's excellent. Thank you. I don't have any urgent business to raise under item 5. Item 6, we don't have anybody registered to speak from members of the public this evening. Which brings me to item 7, work schedule and dates for all Vale and joint scrutiny meetings. So just to add to our currently quite skinny looking work programme for Vale, there's a couple of additional items which we're going to put on there. The first one is that once a decision is made by the government about LGR, and we're expecting that in June or July, we think it would be appropriate to invite the council leaders to discuss how the council is undertaking a transition, how we're working with other councils, etc. The scope of that discussion will depend on what shape the government decides the unitaries will look like, and it also we might also at that point have to have a discussion about whether that discussion is most appropriate for the separate scrutiny committees or for joint scrutiny. So if members have any input that they'd like to make into the shape of that discussion, or kind of things that you would like to scope during that discussion, please do get in touch with me. A second item which I've been discussing with Councillor Casey Rahai from South is looking at potentially, this is for next year, but scoping out a 12-month review using our fly tipping evidence to just have a look at the impact of the booking system changes at OCC waste recycling centres, because there is a lot of discussion among the members of public, a lot of statements being made about increases in fly tipping. So we thought it'd be useful to actually have a look at the data and see what's actually going on with our evidence on that. So we will scope that one out and talk more to officers about that one. I would also say that on our work programme, we do have the item on housing delivery mentioned there. Cabinet are due to discuss the housing delivery strategy action plan on the 27th of April. Committee members are welcome to contribute if you have any thoughts on that. I'm happy to speak to Cabinet on that as well. But again, that's another item, I think, depending on the shape of LGR, particularly whether we end up in Oxford City, will shape how we think about our housing going forward. Do any members of the committee have any comments they'd like to make on our work programme or questions? Okay. As ever, if there's any items that you'd like to add or issues you'd like to discuss, particularly if they're being raised by residents, please do let me know. Item 8, updates on recommendations from previous Vale Scrutiny Committee meetings. Do we have anything particular, Candida?
Well, in your last meeting, you looked at budget, didn't you? And the cabinet member took your points on board, and the committee were content with it. So there's no further feedback at the moment.
Perfect. Thank you very much. All right, which brings us rapidly on to item 9, which is at the heart of the Vale Council Plan annual delivery plan for 2026-27. So I'd like to invite Andy Caution to our hot seat, please. And you have Tim in support online, don't you? So thank you for joining us, Tim. Okay, if you'd like to introduce that, Andy, that would be great. Thank you.
Very pleased to introduce this. Thank you for your welcome. I know at various points last year we quipped that I always had a reserved seat here. Now I'm probably demoted to just frequent flyer status. And I've got to say, I hope that this annual delivery plan is also an old friend to everybody, because I've got to say, scrutiny were key to a lot of its honing and polishing and amending to make it as good as we could get it when we launched it. This is the first review, and it has changed slightly. The major change that I would point out is that we've brought it much closer to the budget setting. So it is informed by and informs the budget process. So it's not run separately as dependent upon sort of budget smiling favourably on this. It can actually come as through it as one part of the process. So that's the key change. As you will look through it, you will notice there are some items that are no longer on the annual delivery plan, because either being completed or there's no action expected on that particular aspect during this year. Other stuff we've added in that we found that we can report meaningfully on. The changes, I hope committee finds those positive. And the whole thing, I think, sits in the way of showing a golden thread through our service delivery, tying it back into the overall council plan at the heart of the Vale. I appreciate that's very much a sort of 20,000 foot bird's eye view of things. I could talk on it at length and bore everybody rigid, and we'll get home at 10:30 tonight, and I probably don't want that. So I'm quite happy to take questions. If it's more detailed stuff, I will refer to Tim. And if it's stuff about delivery and objectives within individual cabinet member portfolios, they may get the questions that would most appropriately go to them. But I'm happy to take any questions and comments. So I think that's a reasonable start.
Thank you, Andy. Yes, very much. Tim, did you have anything you wanted to add at that point?
Thank you, Chair. No, nothing really to add to Councillor Folsham's introduction. He's covered all the points that I think I would have probably added to. So no, happy to take any questions or comments from the committee to help as you consider this item. Thank you.
Thank you, Tim. Committee, would anybody like to kick off with any questions on the delivery plan?
This is a particular interest of mine because I'm on the health scrutiny at council, but there are a few health planned items here which I'm not very clear about. The Health Inequalities Action Plan, for example, and there's one for Didcot and one for Abingdon.
Right. I'll just grab my glasses so I can hear all the details. Sorry.
What page of the pack are they on?
Oh, it's this computer 16 paragraphs. Can't see the numbering on here. Oh yes, page 16. Yes, I found it now.
Righty. Oh yeah, this is the oh yes, the Health Inequalities Action Plans. It's reporting for the Healthy Didcot initiative and also the Abingdon and Caldecott initiatives. These are actually narrative reporting because it's actually very hard to do a sort of quantitative overview. You can get lots of health stats, but reporting on them, you do justice on them, you end up reporting on 20, not 1. So I'm afraid those are still narrative rather than statistical.
Yes, and the one below, I wondered if we could say a bit more about that. That is work in partnership with strategic health partners. And all we're really doing is attending the meetings.
It's list the meetings and a bit of narrative about the major topics covered. So it's to show the areas that are getting particular emphasis on.
I just wondered whether there's something more specific we ought to be doing in health, but perhaps that's really a county responsibility in the main.
It's probably one that you could dive into in more detail with my cabinet colleague that's responsible for healthy community.
Okay, thanks.
Happy, Rob?
Yes, I'm happy with that. Yes.
Okay, I will jump in then. I'm very interested in the different colours. In particular, we have the blue items, which are the items for delivery beyond the period of the annual delivery plan, i.e. 27-28 or later. And I'm just interested in those projects in particular. And I think they're all transferable to a new authority. But I guess the question is, are any of those projects an issue if they're partially completed at the point at which we transition to a new authority? Kind of what work is being done just to make sure that there's no possibility of projects being lost or forgotten or half finished?
It is something that we've been very alive to in the process of getting this delivery plan ready. There are the 2 key ones that have deliverables to post 27 onwards. Specifically, I'm sure nobody's surprised, Great Western Park Health Centre, and also the delivery of total homes for Didcot Garden Town. Those are both big projects, ongoing stuff. It's believed that there's no question that a successor authority would take those on. So we've kind of focused in on that. Other stuff we've tried to concentrate on the deliverables that we know will be deliverable over the period up to which we're no longer an authority. Beyond that did seem somewhat unwise, but holding our hands up and saying, no, we're not looking at these very significant long-term projects would be a bit of a dereliction of duty.
Mm-hmm. Fair enough.
Sure. Well, so I'm not normally on scrutiny, so do forgive me if I'm a bit less familiar with this document. But I guess I just had one specific question and one more general question, but maybe not going to 10:30. The first one is, I should know this already. So the joint local planning examined and adopted is due to be done according to this particular year. There's no risk of that splitting beyond 2027 period. Is that something that we anticipate being finalised within the 2027 period?
There is a very big caveat here that we are in the hands of the planning inspectorate.
Okay.
However, all the indications that we have are that there will be a second set of hearings at some point over this spring to summer, and if everything goes according to the plan, and there's no indication that it won't, they may come up with some main modifications which would then need consultation, and that would lead to us being able to adopt the joint local plan towards the end of this year or the very start of 2027. That is, I'm leveling with that all the information I have. So I really do wish at times I'd got the crystal ball to see into the hearts of the planning inspectorate, but unfortunately they're in short supply.
Sure, no, understood. I think my key thing there, and maybe it's, and I think you probably have answered this, but like, is that it talks about yes or no by March 2027. Yeah. And I guess, of course, there are caveats in this, but I mean, I guess my hope would be that regardless of what the inspector comes back with, we should be pretty clear by March 27. Is that basically our expectation? Is that it's very unlikely to go beyond that? So we will have a yes, a no, or a caveated thing by that stage.
It will have certainty by that point by every measure.
Because I know joint local plans will definitely come back to this committee at various stages and do that. Probably should have sat on those ones. And I think the only other one I want to say is that you mentioned the major change about aligning with the budget, which I think is really good. And without wanting you to go into loads of detail, are there any other minor changes that you think are particularly key for us to be made aware of, particularly for those of us who did some scrutiny who maybe didn't see this last year versus this year or didn't spend enough time on it?
There's a couple of things that we have added in as measures that I think are really positive and outcomes focused. Stuff that isn't about our own sort of internal performance, but it's stuff like we're starting to measure capturing the participation in use of our leisure centres, not just overall numbers, because we've always had a good handle on the numbers. We're starting to look at who's taking advantage of concessionary schemes, the amount of disabled residents who are participating, which is a good idea of how we are delivering these services and targeting them and saying, we haven't seen any gaps here. And the measure is supposed to be seeing an increasing trend, so we're actually reaching these more marginalised communities more. Other big changes are putting in stats for the new and affordable housing units delivered by our registered providers. So we've got a clear picture of statistically how our housing stock is doing.
Thank you.
Thank you, Max.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, so on the first page of under expand our scale up decarbonisation activity, the second blue line says number of council operated leisure facilities that have undergone decarbonisation, and how we will report it. It says 2 by 2027-28 retrospective. I don't quite understand what by 2, I presume mean 2 leisure centres, and that date looks very far in the future. Is that why it says retrospective?
Good question about the wording. I might have to call for Tim's background on that. I think it's showing when the complete decarbonisation activity is finished, so everything's installed on and powered through.
Yeah, so that sounds like it's going to only happen.
A lot of the work is already done and
Yes,
powered up,
yeah,
so we know it's in place and working. I think this was to actually fit in with the very precise phased funding schemes that the government's put in. Have I caught that right, Tim?
Yeah, just to support in there. So again, just looking at the colour coding on that, that is something that is planned to happen in beyond this annual delivery plan's time frame, which is why it's blue. So it's actually for that time. So yes, we can take a view in terms of it saying retrospective. I suppose it is just to look at it at that point and see where it's got to. But the first and foremost is it is in that looking forward, just to say it's going to be beyond 26, 27. And it's going to be in that time period, but we can actually have a look at that wording again. But I will say, I think that's actually taken from the wording that we've got in the Nature, Climate and Action Plan already. So it speaks directly to that as well. So we can take a look at both.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thanks, Tim.
Well, yes, I was going to ask about the health centre in Didcot. That one is down at blue because of the completion date, but is that definitely going to start? Has that now got to a point where they've got contractors appointed and it's going to happen this year? The structure of it to start.
We're talking about Great Western Park.
Yeah. The health centre on Great Western Park. Page 21. The reason I ask is because we've been told it's imminent for quite some time.
Yes, the latest news that I've heard is imminent, but I haven't been told any detail. Afraid I can't add any clarity on that.
So it's down to commence 27, 28.
Yes, again, we get slightly less detail for the forward-looking, the blue stripe things, because that's ahead.
Okay, so that has
As I'm sure you appreciate, the joys of negotiating with the Integrated Care Board and commercial sector companies. There's so much that is happening that either we don't get visibility of, or we're then clamped down on because we can't discuss for commercial sensitive reasons.
because that kind of gives the impression that it's on track to start in 27, 28. And I wasn't sure we were actually that far forward.
I think on that basically it is, as far as the district council is concerned, that may be the case, but unfortunately it involves other parties, including the Integrated Care Board, which is being revamped at the beginning April the 1st. So I wouldn't hold my breath on any of these.
We live in hope.
I couldn't put it better myself.
One sort of question, it might be fairly general, that I was looking at the number of fly tips, for example, and you've got a target of 130, and I feel the number of fly tips is really an external thing. It depends on how many fly tips people actually tip. So I'm not sure whether that's a meaningful target. I mean, what is a meaningful target is ongoing target of how many we investigate.
Yeah.
But I think the number itself, I would have thought, is a bit external to the council, as it were.
Yes, I do take your point there. I think you're right. These two targets have to be read in conjunction, because partly it's the number investigated, and hopefully that will, as the message gets through, if you fly tip, you're going to get caught and you're going to get a sizable fine. The message might start getting through to people and the number starts
I realise that.
diminish. I think the number investigated is relate to our internal performance. The number happening gives us a quantum of the actual size of the problem, and as the chair mentioned earlier in the meeting, there is external factors affecting this that we are yet to see how it's going to play out.
Yes, thanks. Yes, I appreciated that as I thought about it. Yeah.
Thank you, Mum. I'd like to ask about the beacon, because in our next report for our next item, we are told that capital improvements are necessary and vital, and the figure £285,000 of capital works is given, but the beacon doesn't appear in this action plan at all, I don't think. So I was just wondering how those two things match up.
One principle that I would probably ought to have highlighted in my introduction is that the annual delivery plan doesn't capture the entirety of the council's operation. A lot of the business as usual and delivering stuff that is statutory doesn't get covered, because absolutely we need to do the stuff like determining planning applications, collecting the bins, processing, collecting and arranging for recycling, things like that. Beacon is clearly part of the arts strategy, and therefore it's probably better dived into with that report rather than this. Just want to see if we've got a beacon mention. Specifically, because sometimes these things are captured in the intent, but not in the headline name. So
I just feel like, given the size of the importance of the beacon, the size of the figures, the amount of money that they're talking about, it feels like quite a big item to be missed off in comparison to some things on here which might be considered a bit smaller.
it's probably something that is a hard one to measure outside of the beacon's own delivery plan.
Okay.
So
I'll ask the same question at the next item.
Tim coming in.
Tim.
Hi, yeah, sorry, just to help, I think Councillor Bolsham was, and rightly so, was actually already given the feedback that the annual delivery plans will never contain all of the council's activities. But actually with the item that you're going to look at next, which has already got its own delivery plan, that's just one of the examples of something that as an SMT, we do have oversight over some other activities that may not come through on the annual delivery plan, but are still things that we still regularly monitor and look at their progress. So again, it's just to say that it may not be covered through here, but it's still got its own delivery plan that it's been worked through. And obviously you're going to be looking at that next. So no more spoilers, but you'll get into that detail next.
Thank you. So yes, that makes sense if it's actually big enough to have its own whole development plan, delivery plan allocated. All right, thank you so much. Any more questions, Max, and then Robert first?
Oh, you go. Thank you, Chair. I had a question about the Charter multi-storey car park, which is mentioned on page 22 of the reports pack. Certainly for Abingdon, it's a question I think does need answering. And in terms of the timeline, we've got decision on next steps, Q1 27-28. Now, my question really is, in terms of managing a project or an asset like that, to what extent at this point can you kind of build in an anticipation of the impacts that the local government reorganisation might have on a project like that? Because it may be that we have a transition occur midway through the project. My question is, to what extent are you anticipating that? Are you building in any kind of, you might call them contingencies to anticipate how that might impact a project like that?
This, you're quite right, Councillor Medicine. This is the sort of thing where the impact of LGR will be made because it's a major asset. Any changes would involve a lot of capital expenditure, and we will be subject to various central government direction as to the capital expenditure we can incur or the assets that we can dispose of if that's the route that council decides to go down in the run up to reorganisation. And without knowing the format of reorganisation and the geography that we are given by central government, it's next to impossible to come up with a firm. I do know that officers are continuing to work on it as a priority, but there are so many limits when we've got LGR coming down the rails at high speed that I don't want to make any promises that we can't necessarily cash.
Yeah, I suppose there's so much at this point that just isn't really known. But when I saw the Q1 27-28 date there, it kind of jumped out at me as something that could. I'd hate to see something like that get lost in the shuffle, so to speak. Because
absolutely, as an avid resident and councillor, I agree entirely.
Committee, because it's not necessarily a scrutiny thing, but what I don't want to end up doing is hearing about. What I don't want to do is for residents to see in 5 years' time a car park that has still had nothing done to it, no update, no plan, and we end up saying, oh, there was something in the works, but it got lost in the noise around the LGR time, and we're kind of back to where we are now, however many years down the line. So I suppose my comment is if this is maybe going a little bit beyond what scrutiny is, but any kind of contingency planning or anticipation that can be built in at this stage, I think can only be a good thing. And I'm sure our officers are going to take that forward and bear it in mind as they work hard, as I'm sure they're doing.
I'm sure we can all echo that sentiment, and that really is why the focus of this particular point is on the business case. So it's rock solid. We know exactly what we know we can do, can be delivered, and then successor authority can then say yes, no. We've had a spiffing idea. We'll go away and come up with something completely different.
Yeah, how great it would be if we had a bit of certainty. But
yes.
Anyway,
I do think actually, Councillor Madsen, that this kind of question of asset management is something we keep coming back to kind of tangentially in this committee. And I think it might be worth us scoping out a particular discussion after decisions are made on LGR about these capital expenditure schemes and asset management and exactly what we're going to do with places like Abbey House and, you know, the big property items that we own. So I think that might be something for us to take away and keep, you know, discuss and scope out with the relevant cabinet members of finance. Does that make sense?
It does.
Okay. Thank you for that question. Max.
My question was also on the charter, and Councillor Madsen asked it much more eloquently than I would have done, so I'm not.
Okay.
And in fact, I think my question is very similar, which was the line above, which just says asset management. And I really didn't understand that line, but I think we're probably going to look at that in a bit more detail because I assume asset management happens at the moment. And so I don't really understand that line at all at the moment, but perhaps that's something we look at in the future.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's probably a question for the cabinet member for corporate assets. We will answer it.
Tim's also got his hand up when he wants to go first.
I wondered if we're probably going to say the same. I mean, just on the action there, in terms of developing the corporate asset management framework, I understand that is something that's coming through on the work programme. So it's probably going to be something going to be soon discussed or brought forward to Cabinet. So I suppose there's an opportunity there. It's probably a thing in terms of what that will be. But in terms of this actual document, the wording there about actually developing the framework that will determine what happens with asset management is the actual work there, just to try and give a little bit more clarity towards the action or the activity around that.
That's absolutely right. Both cabinets have got the corporate asset management framework, which is a joint strategy, joint framework rather, coming to their cabinet meetings in April. But it is a joint strategy, and it doesn't mean you can't ask questions about it. To answer Councillor Batson's question, yes, assets are managed properly at the moment, but this is putting a proper framework around it, as you would expect through this process, and then feeds into LGR about what we do in terms of disposal or what happens with the new council.
Okay. It might be something for us then to bring back if Cabinet are discussing it imminently, but for us to then bring back after LGR and look at how that those documents and those plans look.
I think your point, Councillor Foxwell, about what are you going to do post decision in terms of assets. Then you've got the framework that we're working to, and then you've got a decision around it.
Perfect, thank you.
Can I just make sure that our leased assets are in there as well as our freehold assets?
Can't remember the detail. But it's more about.
I'm trying to read the 28.
Yeah, I don't think it's every asset or every piece of land or ransom strip that we hold, but it just puts in place what we're going to do around those assets, how we manage them appropriately.
Yeah, perfect. Lovely. I'll take a look at that. Thank you ever so much. Tim, did you have anything else to say, or you thought you had?
It was, sorry, just to that point, and just to capture, yeah, that's the kind of detail that will be captured when it comes through a bit beyond, but just to give some assurance to members that officers from across Oxfordshire and also West Berkshire are already working on a programme in terms of doing a lot of preparatory work in terms of preparing for LGR. Of course, assets is one of the key areas in there, so we're already starting to collate information regarding all the assets in there in terms of what are these owned and pieces of land and buildings. So again, when you at an appropriate time later in terms of when you're looking through the actual work streams, obviously property and asset management will be picked up then as well.
Yeah, the reason I raised it is because a lot of it's commercial and lease, but a lot of the lease is community projects, and they're the ones that have been badly documented in the past and tend to fall between, but matter the most to people on the ground, and you're likely to get the biggest kickback if those go wrong, because they're the ones that the local groups know all about and probably go to every week. So that's one area which I think we have to be quite careful of, because it's certainly reputational.
Perfect. We'll take those we'll take those discussions forward.
Yes.
Perfect. Okay, I've written some notes. Any comments, questions for the Cabinet member or for Tim regarding this action plan? No. So we have been asked. Let me go right back to the top of the report again. We have the Cabinet recommendation. It's just that Cabinet approved the annual delivery plan, but I think our job, as always, is to review these items, make comments of them, but do we have any specific recommendations to Cabinet that we would like to make further to this discussion? I think really the main concern.
Is it worth flagging the items in this plan which may overspill onto new council?
Are they not really just the items that are already in blue?
Yeah, are they? Yeah, maybe they are. Yeah,
They're the 2027, 28.
Yeah.
I think those are the ones that we're particularly interested in. I was going to say that I think we are concerned. The general gist has been that we are concerned about projects that are ongoing and that aren't just business as usual. So, but I think that's something obviously that we can come back to. We'll obviously ask you as Cabinet members. You're obviously keeping an eye on that. I think we probably will say that we're happy that you're keeping an eye on it and obviously on top of it. But yeah, I think as a committee we're keen to come back to that, particularly the question of asset management, property asset management. So.
I must add that Cabinet are all laser focused on the impact of LGR and watching like a hawk for any indications from central government about the way things are going and any change in timetables, any indication of what they're likely to do. But it's a constant topic. So we're not going to just wait for it to sort of land in our oh, we've got to deal with this now. And I've got to give my take my hats off to the policy and insight team who are doing a tremendous job of getting us plug ready to go into any geography that we get given. They're leaning on a lot of the skills and expertise that we developed through the Cloud Council's partnership years and the exit from those agreements. And for that matter, going back even much further, moved into joint working between South and Vale. So we're used to reorganisation. We do it, and we develop some expertise in it. And hats off to the team for keeping those skills alive and proving very timely and helpful.
Good. I think the only comment I would want to make finally is that in previous discussions of these kind of documents, we have been quite critical of the lack of clear numbers and percentages, and because there's been a lot of narrative reporting, and I feel like that has changed a lot, and we have a lot more clear kind of measurables, and I think that's a big improvement.
Thank you.
So yes, thank you for your work on that. So committee, are we happy to note the report?
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay. Perfect.
Thank you for your time.
Thank you so much for your time, Andy and Tim. See you soon. Should we take a 2-minute break just to swap over if anybody needs to go and get a drink of water or anything like that? We will start back again at 7:45. Thank you. cracking again. Welcome back. So we move swiftly on to item 10, which is the Beacon Development Action Plan update for 25-26. I'm very pleased to welcome Councillor Helen Piggles to introduce this item for you.
Thank you. So, good evening, everybody. I'm really pleased to be introducing this update on the Beacon Development Action Plan for 25-26, and it reflects a year of progress and improvement and increasing confidence in the Beacon, which is growing as an arts and culture and community hub. Over the past 12 months, we've seen successes across governance, programming, marketing, and importantly, community engagement. The strengthened leadership structure, which includes the now fully embedded Officer Project Group, and a refreshed Beacon Community Focus Group, has created firm foundations for growth and community-centred delivery. We've also built productive relationships with national cultural funders, namely the Arts Council and National Oratory Heritage Fund. Operationally, the Beacon has continued to deliver an increasingly expanding programme, with the number of shows increasing from 22 last year to 51 this year. Alongside that, we've got strong ticket sales, improved food and beverage income, and the successful return of the Christmas pantomime. User satisfaction remains extremely high, with over 92% of audiences rating their experience positively, and online review scores consistently high. And the launch of the new website in November has strengthened the digital presence, accessibility, and marketing capabilities for the venue. However, alongside these successes, there remain clear challenges. While financial performance is stabilising, there are still inflationary pressures, rising staff costs, and building-related expenditure, which are continuing to impact budgets. Essential capital works originally planned for summer 2025 have been delayed, and there are now urgent building priorities, including toilet plumbing renewal and lift refurbishment, which are placing additional pressures on the existing capital allocation. So to progress these improvements, officers have prepared a return on investment business case to support with the release of necessary capital funds and ensure the building is fit for purpose. Looking ahead, our forward plan combines capital investment, operational optimisation, and more flexible market responsive pricing. The development of dynamic fees and charges and improved room hire utilisation, expanded programming and continued marketing enhancements will all support a more resilient financial model. The Development Action Plan sets out a clear pathway to improving efficiency, strengthening income generation and delivering an accessible and vibrant cultural hub. In summary, the Beacon is moving in a positive direction. Audience numbers, partnerships and community engagement are all growing and performance is improving, and the strategic groundwork is firmly in place. Looking ahead, we now focus on consolidating the gains, addressing the remaining challenges and delivering a sustainable, ambitious future for this important community asset. So I welcome Scrutiny's comments and observations on the progress today. And I mean, as you appreciate, much of what's going on is very much operational, and this is an operational review. So I'm really pleased to have Phil and Daniel with me here today, because they're a lot closer to the day by day and the week by week operation of the venue. Thank you.
Thank you very much. That's interesting. Phil or Daniel, do you have anything you wanted to add at that point?
Not from me, thank you.
Committee, would anyone like to start with questions for our cabinet member?
Thank you for the comprehensive report, and I guess first, congratulations on fantastic progress that's being made. Figure 2, page 28, really caught my attention, because obviously we love bar charts, and those bar charts are all looking very healthy, and you know, really great to see such a big increase on ticket sales, ticket income, bar sales, obviously all interlinked, and the number of shows. I saw that it's gone up from just over 20 to 50. A couple of questions. First of all, sort of, is that looking like it's going to grow in the 26-27? The number of shows, is it going to plateau? Is it going to go down? Is there sort of a roof to the capacity of the number of shows? And what would that look like? And I guess then, if there is, by what criteria would you prioritise that limited space to put on shows, with commercial or cultural?
I mean, the number of shows obviously is limited by the number of days there are in the year. And, you know, weekend shows are always going to be better. And also there are the shows where the venue is hired out and other people put on events. I mean, this is just the shows that we as council put on. I don't know how close we are to the limit. I mean, maybe Daniel can say how close we are and how much further we can go with depends how many days of the week we can get people in then, really, doesn't it?
Yeah, well, I think, I mean, there is capacity to do more, absolutely. And what we've tried to do is, although that does look it's a big leap compared to this time last year, we've gradually increased season by season. So we tend to do 3 seasons a year. And each time we've tried to add just a bit more each time. And that's why we've seen that growth now. But we're not at capacity yet. I think we could do more. But we will hit a point where there's that issue around staffing costs to operate the building, and also the building itself. And it's kind of hinted at in the report that is in need of investment in certain areas. And the building isn't a purpose-built arts centre, theatre. It's been adapted over the years to allow for a level of performance reduction there, but it is also limited by some of its technical capability. So what kind of shows we can take at the Beacon is also kind of limited to a certain extent by the space that we have, in terms of, like, for example, some shows require a high fly tower for scenery to drop down because the Beacon doesn't have that, for example. But that's just one example, you know, of things that but there is still products out there that we can bring in, different events and things, and there is more that we can do. We can grow it more, but we will hit a ceiling at some point in the future, I'm sure. If you wanted to add to that, Phil?
Yeah, I think it's important to say that when we took on the building last year, we started to look at what it was doing and what it wasn't doing. And one of the things it wasn't doing was programming the building, really. So there was some activity, some community activity. People were coming in and hiring it, using it for parties and things. But the programming of the building was a bit ad hoc and wasn't really organised. So we've done that now. We've got a programme. We're programming it properly, and that's going to help. And also the amount that we've increased it by this year, part of that was testing the market. So, you know, is it that kind of thing that people want to see, or is it that kind of thing? So part of that 51 is testing the market that we've gone through the year. So what you might see is it not going up substantially, but more of this and less of that in the future. That kind of balance in the programme. And pantomime was a bit like that as well. We wanted to put that on, slightly bigger ticket price, put it on for a little bit longer, see what the marketplace looks like. It's that kind of supply and demand that we're playing with all the time. What I would say is that generally the supply and demand has worked really well. There is more demand there than you might think. And sometimes you think it's not a purpose-built building, so will people want that experience, or will they drive somewhere else for it? It feels as though people are happy with the shorter drive time and coming to their local venue, art centre, for this kind of activity. So we've got something to work on, which is really positive after the first year. And I think, like I say, we'll add some things in. In addition to that, and we said this last year, partly it's about it being an entertainment venue and a community venue. And the community part of it was mostly there. The programming, the entertainment wasn't quite there, and we've done a lot around that this year. The next part of that building, because of the nature of it, is education and training and that kind of stuff, and skills and learning and talking to the cultural, the creative industry sector. Well, that will come with the strategy that we're developing, and we'll come back later on this year and talk to you a bit more about that. So there's some more to do in this building than just it being community and entertainment. there's a kind of skills and learning and cultural piece to do, and that comes through later this year, and we'll talk to you about that when we're in the strategy back. Brilliant, thank you. Thanks.
What impact has council meetings moving to this building had on the Beacon? Has it made more? Has it increased the availability of space and therefore revenue, or is there a negative side to it that the people wanting to feel or further away feel that everything's coming to Abingdon? So double
I feel
double
like
question.
that. I was then having to put that.
I suspect it's too soon to tell, but it does free up a few more evenings, doesn't it, in the year? Because it's only really full council that we've had at the Beacon in recent years. I mean, years ago we had planning and everything there, but yeah, that's fun. But yeah, I suspect other than freeing up space, and also we've had new arrangements with the town council, which I think has helped optimise the space availability at other times during the week. So it's going to be positive for the Beacon, and just sorry to wantage people, you've got to drive over here for your council meetings.
It's an excellent bus service.
Absolutely, Ron knows all buses.
I think I have a question sort of like jumps off that, which is to do with the arrangement with Wantage Town Council. So just so I'm clear, like beforehand, they paid a service fee, and now from this year they're paying a rental fee, which goes some way towards it. So as part of that rental fee, what's included? I mean, do Wantage Town Council get to use it whenever they wish, or is it a certain number of meetings that they can have a year? And related to that, from what Eric was talking about, when we used it as a full council, did we pay rent to ourselves? I mean, was that what did we use it free of charge when we used it? So I just want to get a sense of whether Wantage Town Council are making up for that loss, if that is a loss. Anyway, so you sort of see what I'm saying. I just want to get my head around it in terms of like, what is the Wantage Town Council arrangement? Were we paying ourselves beforehand? And if so, does the Wantage Town Council payment make up for that short?
Sure, I know the answer to that. I mean, obviously you've formalised the agreement with them, so it's a little bit less ad hoc. But yeah,
I can comment on it.
Yeah.
I was just about the council meeting though. In my time, when was the last council meeting? This council meeting at the Beacon? Can you remember? Because I don't remember there being. I joined in April 24, and it's not something that I was massively aware of happening on a regular basis.
December.
Definitely all of last year. We were there, so I think it's this year.
We only had 2 meetings here, I think. Sorry.
Yeah, so it's not a significant. I mean, it wasn't a significant number of meetings happening at the Beacon, was it? In recent times.
That's true. Before COVID, of course, planning met there every 3 weeks.
Yeah,
So
that's
it was
right.
a lot. So again, it's more just about were we paying for that, or was that something? Yes,
I don't know.
I think part of the answer to your question is that the original agreement goes back a long way. And over the course of time, people have kind of reinterpreted it themselves without going back to the paperwork. And even when you went back to the paperwork, that was a little bit vague as well. You could interpret it one way or another. So I think the kind of re-engaging with them and having the conversation with them was about re-baselining. What does that mean? What's this about these kind of events that take place and the council meetings, and what's the limitation around that? So I think they've come to a reasonable understanding around that. Mostly, the meetings were on Monday evenings, as I remember it, and therefore that wouldn't impact on an entertainment, as we were talking about a minute ago, because it's the wrong end of the week. But it does impact on operationally, because we have to have someone in the building to keep it open. So there's a little bit of a catch-22, but they're at the right end of the week for those meetings, and we now know the limitations on them. And also, in answer to your question, they were kind of paying the service, but I don't think there was a rental that was in there as well. Now they're paying a rental and paying the service charges, so there are 2 payments to be made going forward, and they've paid their backlog of debt, because there was some debt backlog that needs to be paid, so that's been paid as well. So we're on put a line in the sand, we're on a firm footing going forward. There's a clear limitation on the events associated with the municipal year and meeting spaces. And generally we can manage it within the operation. It doesn't impact upon the entertainment, the growth areas necessarily.
So sorry, just to follow up, if that's okay, just for clarity. So I think that's really good. I'm glad that's been established. But just in terms of, in terms of the specification in terms of Waterstones Council, so at the moment they have their meetings on a Monday, it doesn't really affect operationally, but I mean, they're now paying rent as well as service, right? So is there a limited number of days they can meet? Are they have it been said you can't meet on Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday because of, so that's been written in terms of, okay, that's been clarified.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you. Yes, that was one of my big questions. I'd like to ask you guys a little bit more about the cost per user, which I initially thought looked quite high. It seems to me quite a lot. Everybody walks through the door, costs us £8. But actually looking into it a bit more and speaking to you last week, actually that's relatively low for the sector, you know, kind of local authority subsidised arts venues. So could you just tell us a little bit more about that cost? Because I think it really helps, because the figures of £300,000–400,000 per year look big and have always been a source of concern. But actually, when you look at it as cost per user, perhaps it looks much better value. So if you could tell us a bit more about that, I'd be very grateful.
Yeah. I'm also going to say that obviously the cost per user isn't just people going and having fun, it's also providing for the community. And if you believe that arts is good for everybody's health and well-being, then to me it's a good investment. And the more people we can get through, the better, because in effect that will lower that cost per user, because there's certain costs that are going to be fixed costs no matter how many people come through. And am I allowed to say it compares very well with our colleagues in South Oxfordshire?
Good value for money.
But yeah.
I think what I would say is that last year we came back to you with a balanced scorecard, and the idea about a balanced scorecard is that you measure social value as well as measuring the cost of a building, and that's where you get this kind of if it was just £300,000 and nobody came, it would be terrible value. But that's why the cost per user is important, because it gets balanced with the amount of people using it. And the programme shows a balance in the kind of activities, which is what I talked about earlier on. So it's not a lot of people coming just for one activity. They're coming for various, there's children, there's adults, there's the things about health and well-being, mental health and physical activity, because some of the activities are dance. So there's a whole range of social value going into there. And that's why the cost per user and the balanced programme are important. And that's why you'll get more social value when the education, training, skills stuff comes along. So in terms of the balanced scorecard, it's not just about cost, it's about the value add. So what we will hopefully be coming back to you next year is, okay, the cost might come down a little bit. We're hoping to do a bit on that. What I'd like to do is the cost per user comes down a lot, so we're getting more bang for our buck, more value out of it for the local community and the wider community. So that's kind of where we're coming from. And at the moment, it's quite positive, but I think there's a better story. I think we can get you to a better place on that one.
Lovely, thank you. Kind of following on from that, really, of course, the more users you have in a building, the more wear and tear there's going to be. And you've already mentioned your increased costs of things like toilet refurbishment, lift refurbishment, and those seem to me the kind of things that are particularly vulnerable to more users. And you've talked, and we mentioned in the previous item, there's £285,000 of capital works needed. Are you happy that the funding is coming for that, or are you concerned that perhaps the council isn't committing that money? I was interested that this is not, for example, in the council plan that we've just discussed, but although they explain that's because you've got your own substantial development plan.
Yeah, and our substantial plan is in the service plans, so it's listed in our service plan. So, and it's in other documents like the capital plan. So it's not an invisible item within the council's broad umbrella of documents that it's using. Sorry, Hannah, you look like...
No, that's all right. You're proud.
Okay. Yeah. Sorry. So in that sense, it's not invisible and it's a reasonable spend. what the council did about 6 months ago, they said, well, LGR's coming, let's just have a think about, are we spending money wisely? So that's why you've got an additional appendices in this report to actually say, okay, let's have a proper look at that, make sure we're going to get a return on our investment here, whether that's social value or reduced costs. And we've done that piece of work, and we think it's still worth having that investment. It was never taken off the table, it was just paused. So as far as we're aware, it's in the capital plan for the coming year, and we think we've justified a case with our finance colleagues to actually let that now go ahead. So that's where I think we're at. And you do have to invest in buildings.
Yeah.
And there is that balance, and that's why getting our costs, that's why when Helen was introducing it, she talked about a governance and administration kind of costs being managed, because we needed to get them into a place where we've got some control over the fixed costs and the variable costs. Because obviously if you have a show on 3 nights as opposed to 2 nights, you've got that extra night of people managing the building and the exits and everything else and getting people to their seats. So there's some variable costs in all theatres and arts venues. So we've got to keep an eye on that. And we've got to have some kind of resilience model in all theatres, have a resilience model so that they are quiet, you know, on a Monday, Tuesday night, but they're very busy on a Friday and Saturday night. So we've got to have that in place. So the more income you make, there is going to be some more expenditure, and some of that's on repairs and maintenance. But overall, that value add to the community, and if we can get that in front of the variable costs, then you'll see the headline figure coming down as well. So that's what we're trying to manage.
Yeah,
I think in terms of you know, the capital expenditure on the building, I mean, it'd be great if all we needed to do was sort of revamp everywhere and you know, put that good lighting on and all that sort of thing, because I mean, people don't choose where to go for their night out based on the toilets, but if the toilets aren't good, they won't go back. And I think that's and the same with the lift. If you have to wait 10 minutes to get a lift because it's you know it's gone creaking, it can only take a small number or whatever, you know, it's going to impact people's satisfaction and whether they go back, whether they, you know, say to their friends and colleagues, yeah, you should go there. And I suspect those toilets have not been revamped or, you know, brought up to standard in many years. So I don't think they've done badly really. So a bit of investment in basic structure is needed, but that will impact on what we can spend on the goodies really, isn't it? But they have to be done.
Goodies. And as cabinet member, are you confident that you've got that the cabinet the rest of the cabinet are sympathetic to that? You don't feel like a lone voice?
I hope so. I believe so.
Okay, excellent. Correct.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, I was wondering, there is this capital budget to spend, but there are things coming up which look like they will put pressure on that budget. But couldn't you argue that spending the money is going to unlock the future income sooner? And so is there a case to say, well, yeah, it's an expense and we make more, but it will be worth it in the long run? And I've got another question is I would hope that we'd be able to hand over to the next authority a good going, I wouldn't say going concern, but you know what I mean? And I think that would be admirable, and to spend the money sooner rather than later makes sense to me.
Yeah. Need to convince our finance colleagues.
No, we agree with that, and in the appendices that Daniel and his team have put together, it demonstrates kind of casual staffing, ticket sales growth, room hire. So that started to bring that business case forward with the investment, and it's specifically tied into the investment, and it shows it over the next 3 years. So you're absolutely right. And without the investment, we can't bring some of that stuff through. And also there's some partnership work as well, which we've alluded to in the report. And we've now got £20,000 out of the Arts Council and £20,000 out of the Heritage Lottery Fund. And there are significant amounts of money in them not for building repairs, but for the activity that you can put in the buildings. So that kind of development of activity going in the buildings, which generates an income in itself. But actually the development of that can be paid for by third parties. So we'll be looking at some of that stuff, and that links back to the strategy and the development stuff as we go forward. So you're absolutely right.
Brilliant, thank you.
Yes, I mean, the parking there has always been a bit of a problem in terms of it's limited. And I sort of think I heard that we've now been allowed to use the spare bit at the leisure centre. Now, to be honest, since I've used the facility for a very long time, I always did anyway. It's not really advertised. And I think a lot of people are not aware of that. And possibly would think, oh no, that's going to be really busy. I can't get there early enough to be able to park. And they say, well, they don't go. So I'm wondering whether whether the fact that we have more parking available, because I think certainly the last time I parked at the leisure centre, they had the tennis courts open. Right. So if the tennis courts are always open, that's a seriously extra amount of parking. Because the actual leisure centre does tend to use quite a lot of its own parking. But if everybody knew that, I think that would really make quite a big difference to whether people are prepared to risk travelling a reasonable distance to go. So the parking, I think, was something I wanted to mention. Yeah. And I love the membership scheme. I remember a long time ago in Richmond Theatre, meeting a little old lady who was, I suppose, in her early 80s, I'm guessing. And she just took out a membership and just went every Monday, because Monday was the days that they were offering an extremely low rate. So she just took out an annual membership and would go every Monday. And it was kind of her safe space, her ability to talk to people. And then she would tell everybody about what the performance was like and spread the word around. And that kind of community information is really valuable to actually boosting sales. I noticed you started it only January and you've only got 69, but I think that could be,
it's gone up since then.
a really valuable social thing, as well as it's not just for tickets and things.
I mean, the great thing about the membership is you communicate directly with the members and say, look, this is coming up, and they get slightly advanced notice of what's happening before everybody else. On the parking, that arrangement has been formalised with the leisure centre, and if I've got this right, I mean, because of the way the ticketing that's done now, we now have the contact details of everybody who books tickets, so we can make sure that everybody knows that there is overflow parking available. I got that right.
Got that right. It was an informal. There was no agreement. People just like yourself possibly just park there. And we've actually now agreed with the leisure centre that we can do that, and we've got permission to put it as Councillor Piggill said on our ticketing information on our website and things like that as well. So it's a good step forward in increasing.
If you go on the website, that would be really useful.
Yeah, and the membership's at 83 now since the report. It's gone up slightly, but it's growing gradually.
I mention the sign, please.
Yes.
I don't know, those of you who won't go to the Beacon for the council meeting may have noticed that the sign from the main road into the Beacon was faded. So anybody new going there couldn't see that it said Beacon. That has now been fixed. So, yeah.
I wanted to mention about the focus group and how this discussion and the interaction and the spreading of the word and that kind of thing as well.
Yeah, and a lot of these things that we're talking about, things like parking and the different programming, signage, that sort of thing. This is the sort of thing that we're talking about at the focus group, which meets 6 times a year, 8 times a year. And that's proving really, really valuable. We've got a good cross section and across the community. Our oldest member, I think, is well into her 80s, and we also have members in their early 20s. So we've got a good cross section. We've got people who put on events, people who attend lots of events, and this sort of thing that, like Judy mentioned, the parking and that sort of thing. This is the sort of thing that's coming out of the the discussions of the focus group, and they're coming up with some great ideas, which we're doing our best to put in place.
Yeah.
Including a final afternoon.
Yeah.
Any more questions or comments?
Maybe I think to emphasise what Eric said, that you should push the business case for the capital expenditure, and in this current environment, if you can spend capital as soon as possible, with the inflationary pressures constantly on us, really spending now is the economic way to go if we can do it. So I fully support your business case.
Thank you, Ron. Yeah, so to come to our recommendation then, and to discuss that a little bit, our recommendation is that scrutiny notes progress made in implementing the Beacon Development Action Plan during the period April 25 to March 20, including performance highlights and areas for improvement. And I think that's been really clear through your report and through our discussion this evening, how much work has been done, how much more positive and what vibrant things are looking around the Beacon, whether that's through the cafe, through the community engagement, and indeed through the events that are being put on. So thank you for all your work, and well done. And Helen, well done as well for shepherding it. But I would like to echo what Ron and Eric have said, and perhaps as a committee we could agree that as our recommendation to Cabinet, that really we'd like to support you, Councillor Piggles and Phil and Daniel, that really there is a strong case for investing in this. The work that's happened in the last year has clearly shown that there is a huge amount of value, and particularly when you look at that cost per user alongside a stabilising financial position. So I think maybe if we could have that noted, please, as our recommendation, our request to Cabinet, that we would really like to see that expenditure committed to and agreed to, and the work done that needs doing. And again, it's about bringing it as an ongoing concern and putting it in as favourable position as possible, so that it gets taken on and taken forward by whoever comes next. Any other comments, committee, or any other recommendations you'd like to make to Cabinet, or comments to our guests?
Are you keeping the cafe open on polling day? Because that spreads the information faster than anything else.
On polling day,
Yeah.
would have thought so. Yeah.
Yes. Because that, if they see it open then they know it's open and they'll use it. But they don't come and being voted for so long and it been shut. Because I think it might surprise people to find it open.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Brilliant. Thank you so much for joining us and for sharing all the work you've done.
Thanks very much.
Thank you so much. And on that note, I declare this meeting ended, and we can. Thank you very much.